All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you guys for attending our webinar this evening, or part of our education series. And we are lucky to have Sean Swanson Johnson, who is an occupational therapist and also the founder of Enhancing Skills for Life. Also, I'll let her talk a little bit about that, but I got to know her a long time ago, even before starting Camp No Limits. And so it's really cool to have her on here talking to everyone tonight. So, Sean, I'll let you give some more details and we will be excited. We also have panel here tonight. So if anyone has questions, they can share a little bit of their experience of living with bilateral upper limb loss.
Yay. Thank you, Mary, for asking me to be part of this tonight. I appreciate it. Kind of cool to be able to share this. And yes, Mary and I go way back. We were talking at the beginning of the session, probably close to 18 years ago, 19
Wow.
years ago. Yeah. I think I've known Mike Sanaj about that length of time as well. But how about we go around and in my sequence of panelists, let's go around and introduce ourselves. If you don't mind, I put you on the spots and call your names. Sarah, Best, will you go first?
Absolutely. Hey, all. I'm Sarah Best, and I have both of my arms. But my daughter, I might be able to get her on screen in just a second. My daughter does not. So we adopted Min almost 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years ago this September that we adopted her from Vietnam. Purposefully looked for a child with limb loss. So we're in the process of adopting a second one. So that's where I'm from.
Awesome. Hey, Mike, you're next.
Hi, I'm Mike Sanaj, quad amputee for 20 years now, former Camp No Limits peer mentor and counselor and all that kind of stuff. Just
Former.
happy to see everyone and say hello.
Oh, hi. Hi, Mitt.
Mike, you can't.
Well, sorry, she was in the middle of watching her movie. She looks like a hot mess. We just got done painting. That's what Min does, isn't it? Paint.
Nice to meet you, Min.
Me too. I really want to go to swing.
Oh, not even bedtime yet. All right, that's all she'll get. Sorry.
Okay, next on my screen is Bella.
Hello, my name is Bella. I am a quadruple amputee as well. I've been coming to camp, I want to say like 6 years maybe. I am also in nursing school right now and yeah, going to college in Boston, so.
All right, thanks, Bella. Sarah Cronin, you're next.
Hello, I'm Sarah Cronin. I live in New York. I was born with upper limb differences, and I have been a mentor at camp for a couple of years now. But what I do is I'm a high school math teacher for 17 years. So,
Ooh, what age?
I have 9th, 10th, and 11th graders this year. Algebra 1, geometry, and algebra 2.
In person or online?
Both.
Okay.
So I'm in school, but we teach, students come in and then I have students that are learning at the same time online.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, everybody knows Mary, but Mary, if you want to say anything, feel free to chime in.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I'm so glad to have you here. We'll let him go. And Mike, you're not getting away with saying former Camp No Limits mentor. Goodness.
I heard that too. All right, then next, Sarah Mclaughlin.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mclaughlin. I work with Camp No Limits as one of the physical therapists and also help coordinate the volunteers. And I do have a son with limb difference, but he has lower extremity limb difference. So I talked about him in one of the other sessions. But glad to have you all here today.
Thanks. All right, next is Kelsey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey. I am the program operations manager. So I do a lot of behind the scenes things, but my background is adaptive recreation. So thank you all for joining tonight.
Yeah, thanks for hosting this. So I was communicating with everyone earlier, just saying, I have an hour-long presentation that I've done before, but I'm not so sure that there's so many wonderful people on this panel that have their own personal experiences living without both arms or all four limbs. And so I definitely, if there's points during the presentation, throughout the presentation, we need to sidetrack or go a different direction, we are going to be casual and easy peasy here. So if there's something that comes up on the screen, make sure you unmute yourself or put something in the chat, and we'll make sure to address it. But if do you guys on the panel want to start off with anything else besides the introductions about yourselves? Anything you want to learn tonight or want to make sure we discuss?
I was going to point that out, that Sarah and I will be watching the chat. So if there is anything that people, if anyone has any questions, we'll make sure we look that up and we can let you know too, Sean, okay. So that if someone asks something, we can address that right away.
Okay, thanks. Mike.
I was just going to say, if there's something that you're having difficulty with, or know someone that's experiencing difficulty with some kind of ADL or something to that effect, definitely put it in the chat or raise your hand, do something, get our attention, and we'll focus on what your need is rather than just always, going, well, this is this is that. So that would be my suggestion.
Perfect. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen then and head on over to the PowerPoint. All right. So, and I'll just take this time to give you a little bit more information about myself. I am an occupational therapist, and I've been, had a few different hats over the years, but I started off working in outpatient rehab at TR Memorial Hermann in 1998, I believe, and fell in love with prosthetics. Wanted to find a way to do that on an all day, everyday basis. And so I lucked into a job at Autobach. And for about 9 years, 6 years with Autobach, I traveled around the country and the world. So this was my view daily out of an airplane window. And I got to pack and unpack a lot of suitcases and check into a lot of hotel rooms. And then after those 6 years, I went to go work for a company that specializes in and works in just arm prosthetic devices, and traveled again for another 3 years doing that. And then I had kids and took a little bit of time off. But during that time, kind of took some time to take on a few other projects. So I started a consulting company where I can see patients and do some consulting as an independent contractor. And then I also started a nonprofit, which I'll talk more about at the end of this. But I know Bambi Lombardi is in the audience, and Bambi and I, were together during that 6 years of time at Autobach. So I know she knows the unpacking feeling and still does all of that traveling to this day, except for maybe COVID time. And so here are the kids at this point in the game, but now that they're school age, I have a bit more time to kind of focus on some of these other endeavors. So tonight, with the bilateral upper limb loss, I'm going to kind of discuss acute and early care, like what happens when someone's newly maybe lost their limbs before they get a prosthesis, talk about all the various types of prosthetic devices that are out there, and then prosthetic training, talk about self-care tasks and leisure activities, when something happens early or congenital versus maybe adult onset, various resources that exist out there, and then open it up for Q&A and then discussion from the panel. So I do want to make sure that everyone knows up front, in case this is not what you were expecting. And if it isn't what you're expecting, please type this in the chat so we can pivot. But limb loss at a later stage in the game versus limb absence or limb difference at an early age or congenital, a majority of this presentation will focus on loss. And so there will be several slides will focus or address congenital or early loss, but there's a lot of adaptations that happen when it's from birth or a young age. So, and maybe that entails foot skills. There are entire associations, social media platforms, camps, and events for pediatric needs, as you guys are all familiar because you're here because of Camp No Limits. You know that that's the case, but some therapists may not. So kind of discussing bilateral versus someone that's missing both arms or all four limbs versus someone that's missing one arm is quite different. So unilateral limb loss, upper limb loss is less frequent than lower limb loss, but bilateral upper limb loss is even more rare or unique compared to someone that's missing one arm. And so someone that is missing one arm, they may have a remaining hand or arm to be able to complete their daily tasks, not to downplay unilateral limb loss. But bilateral upper limb individuals that lose their arms at a later stage, they're going to be completely dependent for some period of time, and possibly, for an extended period of time. Let's see how. Okay, so I will talk a little bit more about this towards the end of the presentation as well, but we are not going to be able to cover everything in 1 hour. There's a 3-day conference dedicated to people missing both arms, and it's called Skills for Life. There are past video conferences that are available from a company called Resourceful Recordings. I'm not sure, I don't remember or recall off the top of my head how much they might be, but I know that there's kind of bootleg copies floating around out there somewhere too. So anyway, we'll talk about Enhancing Skills for Life a little bit more at the end of the presentation. But just to give a little history, the original Skills for Life event that happened in September of 2002, which is what I think changed the trajectory of my career. I was working at TIER, Memorial Hermann at that point in time, and I was just in awe of this situation that I attended and seeing, 15 to 20 individuals missing both arms in the same room together. I knew it was a very unique and special situation. And so everyone promised that this event was going to happen again, but it didn't happen again until 2008. And I was a chair of that particular workshop in 2008, making sure that it continued and making sure that it happened. And then we had another one in 2011, another one in 2015. But we started to grow. We started to get international attendees. We started to have up to 54 individuals missing both arms, and 19 were missing all four limbs. And then our last event, which was 3 years ago now, or almost 3 years ago now, it grew even more. 70 individuals missing both arms, and 41 were missing all four limbs. So it's the magic of that event is just being together face to face and interacting with other individuals that can relate. And so we hope to continue on with this event. And that was one of the reasons why the nonprofit was started, is to ensure that we could continue to hold an event to bring people together face to face. So here's some pictures from the event in 2018. Oh, Mikey. And then I don't know, we'll talk about a few of these individuals at the end, but Jessica Cox-Chamberlain and Tisha Wexton, Ania Mareka and Anne Jones. And then these are two little Camp No Limits guys. So they were about 4 years old when they attended Skills for Life. And I know they've come to camp as well. And so, but just having those parents be around those ladies who can kind of show them what life is like 30 years down the road was priceless. So, okay, that was a little bit of Skills for Life, but we'll get into a little bit more detail about that later too. So from when someone is, freshly injured and taking them all the way out into reintegrating into the community. So early on, what are the things that we need to focus on as occupational therapists? So we are going to focus on wound care, scar management, edema control, desensitization, range of motion, strengthening, psychosocial issues. But those things we're going to typically do with someone that has got limb loss, limb absence, but When it's missing both arms, we're going to work on core strengthening, balance and fall recovery, and lower extremity stretching. So here's some examples and pictures of things that we might be working on early on. So again, wound care, scar massage, edema management and shaping to help prepare the upper limb to fit nicely into a socket. Desensitization, we're all of these things that we're going to be doing and working on as occupational therapists, it's so that we're preparing the limb to tolerate a socket for 8+ hours a day. So, you know, and desensitization, we're looking at for someone that's lost their arms, the nerves are used to traveling to the ends of their fingertips. And so with desensitization, we're going to kind of bombard the residual limb now with different textures and temperatures and sensations to get the nerves used to traveling to the new endpoint so that it can tolerate the socket and not be so sensitive. We'll also address range of motion and strengthening to help them be efficient and good users of a prosthetic device. And like I said, for someone that's missing both arms, we really want to focus on lower extremity stretching and balance and core strengthening. So with different modalities or different activities to help engage and strengthen these body parts so that they are as prepared as possible to either use their feet or to use prosthetic limbs. So I'm going to pause there for a quick second and just see Mary or anyone else if there's any questions so far.
Nothing so far in the chat.
Okay. All right. So still early on in the process, this is anecdotal information, at least from my informal polling of people, kind of like top priorities for folks right after they've lost both arms. They want to be able to communicate independently. So whether that's a smartphone with earbuds or a stylus that they might need, eating, toileting, bathing. Again, these are going to differ from person to person, but these are kind of the top 4 priorities for early on. So when it comes to communication, so is there Bluetooth hands-free headsets that we could recommend? How do they make or receive calls without being able to have to press anything or touch anything? Is it voice activated? Can they listen to music independently? Can they listen to podcasts or watch TV or read books on a Kindle? Through their phone, what kind of apps might help them be independent and play music or text or set timers or take hands-free pictures and be able to maybe read text back to read a news article or read a text back to someone. If it's a computer, do they need some sort of adaptive software to help them be able to be independent on their computer to type out documents? And then when it comes to charging their devices, if it's a tiny little, cord that has to fit into the end of a phone, that's pretty difficult. And so they might need require help with that. But now with these, I can't remember if it's Q10, these amazing hands-free or cable-free charging mats that you can lay a phone on that will charge so you don't have to plug anything in. So another early on task that people are really interested in being independent with is feeding. So maybe they're below elbow and they can use, this is a universal cuff with a fork. So maybe they could use that to help feed themselves before they get a prosthesis. And with toileting, is it something that where you can prep, someone could go in and prep the toilet with either toilet paper or wet ones? And this picture is a little inaccurate because the bottom lid should be up and that the toilet paper can be just directly onto the bowl. But in early stages, this could be a way where someone could just rub their bottom along the toilet paper or wet wipes. And people obviously can use bidets as well. So electric self-cleaning toilets. And I know in some situations, toilets might be helpful for a period of time or may not be helpful at all. And it's just what's personal preference and then what will help you maybe train to be independent with your standard toilet, like what you might see out in the community. That the bidet might help you achieve a little bit of comfort with that piece of learning before you have to go out into a community or a restaurant or a store to be able to use public toilets. I know for some people though, bidets are just not helpful at all and make things worse. So here's a little video of one of my patients' bathroom setups. So motion detector, toilet lid lifts, and the remote that he's able to activate with his residual limb or his prosthesis to do the water, the pressure, the temperature, and the drying. And then his shower setup. So just a quick little example there. So some more examples of various adaptive equipment that might be for bathing. Some really unique adaptations that people have come up with, and everybody's different. And I know Mike Sanaj is on this call, and he's going to have some great tips and tricks here in a bit too. But whether it's maybe like a very small, quick and easy adaptation, taking one of these horrible like knobs that you can't operate ever, even with hands, and turning it into some sort of lever. And then this device over here is some sort of suction cup mounted. It's a car wash sponge that can kind of pivot from top to bottom, you know, and so that a patient or a person could rub their shoulder or their bottom, and you can mount these at different heights around the shower so you can reach different areas. So after the early considerations of these topics that I mentioned with eating and bathing and toileting and communication, you're kind of going to then look at how are we going to start working on prosthetic training. So the longer side, if someone's missing both arms and they're right hand dominant, but their left side is maybe longer, that longer side is typically treated as the dominant side if that's agreeable with the person being trained. But so prosthetic training should begin with the dominant side, and then learn independent use of each of prosthesis, and then incorporate them together. The putting the prosthesis on and taking it off is unique to each person and will depend on the level of loss. And they may not be independent right away. This may be something that they practice, you know, for days, weeks, and maybe there's equipment that's needed to help them put it on and take it off independently. Training should happen one component at a time, and if possible, and working with the prosthetist, adding components as tolerated. So beginning with the terminal device because it's the most used. And then training progresses from, this is kind of like the meat of what the most of the time I spend on with people when I'm training them, but it's controls training. And then moving on to repetitive drills, and then looking at two-handed functional skills, you know, self-care tasks. So if we don't have success during controls training, it's really hard to move on to repetitive drills. If we don't have success with repetitive drills, it's really hard to move on to, let's try to use your two arms, two prosthetic devices together. If you have problems during either of the controls training or repetitive drills, then you talk to the prosthetist and figure out what's wrong and what needs to be changed. So, but I don't like moving on from one of these phases if they're not successful. And what I mean by success is, like, if I ask someone to do something 10 times and they're able to do it 5 times out of 10, that's to me not successful. I'm looking at 8, 9, 10 successes out of 10 attempts. And so controls training is just making sure that they're able to open it and close it, operate the elbow, rotate the wrist. And I'll get into a little bit more detail of these things, but basically progress from one aspect to another. So I also think that home evaluations are essential to evaluate what areas of the home may need modification so that someone can be independent with their self-care or home management tasks. And I also believe that adaptive equipment is a must for someone with bilateral upper limb loss, at least early on. There, many people will say, no, like, yes, it was helpful early on, but as time went on, that just became cumbersome. And then it caused me to not be independent with something else. So I needed to learn how to do everything with just my prosthetic arms. So this adaptive equipment will be addressed before prosthetic training, ideally, or in conjunction with prosthetic training. And it's going to vary from person to person, depending on their level of limb loss. And then for people that are missing both arms or all 4 limbs, they should be shown how to accomplish self-care tasks with and without their prosthetic devices and with and without adaptive equipment. So in the event they're without their arms for any period of time, this is essential in helping them maintain that level of independence. And whether it's they have multiple prosthetic devices too. So if something is down, for repair, that they have a backup set of arms. And then I also think home modifications are important. And so whatever it is that, is able to be done, we can always make those recommendations as occupational therapists. And then for some reason I have a little bar at the bottom of my screen and I cannot see the last lines on the screen. And I cannot get this little bar to go away. So
service animals. Let's talk
Okay.
about service animals.
Okay, so service animals, there's a group that came and spoke at Skills for Life in 2018 called Canine Companions for Independence. And there's multiple organizations out there, but service animals are going to be very helpful to accomplish certain tasks that might need to be done as well.
Also, Sean, we did have one question.
Yeah.
Is there a certain point of desensitization needed before range of motion and strengthening can begin?
Great question. I think you can work on all of those kind of simultaneously. If they're sensitive and they can't even be touched, then yes, that needs to be addressed before you can start working on range of motion and strengthening. But if it's something that they can tolerate and it's not painful, 10 out of 10, then it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but it's something that needs to definitely be addressed, and you can do those things simultaneously.
Yeah, sorry, Sean, I put in the chat box that was my experience, simultaneous for desensitizing as well as range of motion and prosthetic training as well. So it was all concurrent at the same time. The limiting factor was the tissue health. Could my skin tolerate the load bearing? Were there sutures? Were there any open wounds? Things like that. So, and all that stuff is taken into account between, prosthetically and your OT and other therapists.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Okay, so home automation here. Just talking about smart homes and whether you might control something through an iPad, through various apps. And is it a screen? Is it a touch screen? And is it voice activated? You can set alarms through smart homes. You can monitor your house through video through apps. You can unlock and open doors. You can control your thermostat. You can turn on and off appliances, lights, TV, control music. So there's so many cool things that can be done through voice controlled. And there's, I watch my European and Australian colleagues and friends who have got these amazing homes that people come in and set up for them. And so the smart homes through something like Alexa or Amazon or Google Home, and I can't think of the other companies and brands, but that those have made a lot of those really expensive home modifications something more affordable and easy for people to maybe incorporate into their life, so that they can be independent with some of these activities at home. So on touchpad screens, I just want to make sure everyone knows there's a difference between capacitive and resistive. And so is your thermostat at home, is it capacitive or is it resistive? Is your tablet or your iPhone capacitive or resistive? If you have a prosthetic hook, that is going to affect which kind of screen you might be able to operate. And so when you go up to an ATM and need to get money, and those seem to be a little bit outdated now at this point with Venmo and PayPal, and that any kind of screen that you might go up to, you might have to figure out whether it's sensitive to skin and touch, so capacitive, or if it's pressure related and it's resistive. So there are some cool alternatives to figuring out how to work these screens. So there are gloves out there, but again, it has to be a glove that goes over skin to make that contact. But we've had several people try out Slim Jims, string cheese, Ocello sponges. So this is an example of some people on a subway in Japan with their gloves on their hand, but using string cheese to operate their capacitive touchscreen phones. So anyway, there's some cool alternatives out there, and if your styluses are not working with your device, or if you need to figure out how to use something with a hook or a myoelectric hand.
Sean, may I?
Yeah.
So another thing that I discovered was depending on the manufacturer of the device. So I have difficulty with Apple products, but Samsung products are much easier and more consistent for me to utilize. So my current phone is a Samsung. I was introduced to some Apple phones and Apple tablets, and it was less than 50% of the time versus Samsung, which is closer to more like 80, 90% of the time I'm able to activate what I'm touching or tapping or things like that.
Mike and anybody else on this call, isn't that a difference, or the difference between the capacitive and resistive? So I think capacitive is Apple products and resistive is Android. I don't know for sure, but it seems to be that could be the case.
No, I had a true resistive phone before, and it actually takes pressure on the screen. So you can feel your finger or hook or whatever device you're touching the screen with actually depress the screen. So the capacitance, one of the things I also found is that using the side of my hook is more effective and efficient rather than the point of my hook. Now I know that gets a little wonky with the keyboards and trying to tap an individual letter, but I wear a stainless steel hook, and it's just something that I found is that the Samsung devices are a little more receptive to what I'm asking it to do versus iPhones. Both my wife and daughter have iPhones, so when I try to, scroll a picture or whatever, it's tedious. It's not as efficient.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've kind of addressed a lot of this stuff with communication. But just making sure everybody knows that what apps do you guys use for hands-free picture taking? Like there's one out there that everyone raves about, and it's called Say Cheese. And it's cheese is spelled CHEEZ, but all you have to do is say the word cheese, and the phone, when you're in that app, takes the picture without you having to pressing any buttons. So anyway, just there are other apps out there, but type in your preferred apps if you have hands-free picture taking ideas. All right, let's see. So I'll skip through that too. But so when it comes to prosthetic design, depending on the individual, so whether it's missing both arms at the shoulder level, missing both arms at the elbow or above the elbow, missing one at the shoulder, one above the elbow, bilateral below the elbow, partial hand, the prosthetist is going to be working with someone missing both arms extensively for a period of time. And if this cool bottom picture on the right hand side is an example of the arm early on that this patient started out with versus what she is now going to be fit with. You can see how much smaller it is. how much shorter the forearm is. She was able to operate this original one pretty independently, but had a harder time reaching midline. So the prosthetist made adjustments so that things would be easier operation-wise. So there's just a lot of things to take into account when missing both arms. And is it myoelectric, is it body powered, or is it a combination of the two? So just some pictures of prosthetic arms and the different types of componentry that might be out there. And I'm going to go into a little bit of videos of being able to put a device on and take it off. So this is an OT, Art Heinze, who is demonstrating how he puts his elbow disarticulation and below elbow prosthesis on, or takes it off and then puts it on, excuse me. Old school video. I think the point of all of these videos that I'm about to show you is there's so many different ways. And maybe Mike at the end of today will demonstrate how he does his, and he's just puts on one side, but just showing this is an example of a dressing tree to help this individual be able to put his prosthetic arms on, his externally powered electric hooks. So he's using these amazing garage work hooks that are strategically placed at a certain height. To step into the prosthesis and then use those hooks to pull strapping over his shoulders to keep the prosthesis on. I'm going to bypass this video, but I'll show a few seconds of it. It's just how you could make your own dressing tree out of PVC pipes, and take it apart, travel with it. But this is a little bit of overkill in my opinion, unless like the dressing tree is definitely how you're going to be putting your arms on and off every day and you want to travel, and you want to be able to do it by yourself and not have a family member or loved one do it for you. But just showing you an example of how easy it is to kind of put something together, break it down and take it with you. Okay, so you really want to think about, for someone that is missing both arms and their prosthetic limbs, is the complexity and the weight of the components. So if they're bilateral transradial, you're going to be dealing with a terminal device, and you're going to be dealing with wrist rotation and wrist flexion most likely. If they're missing both arms above the elbow, then you're going to be dealing with an elbow component and internal and external rotation of the elbow. And if they are shoulder disarticulation or four-quarter, then you might be dealing with a shoulder joint, and whether it's going to flex forward or abduct out to the side for certain activities. So once all of those pieces kind of come together, I'll show this quick video of this person demonstrating how they flex their elbow and relax their elbow just by using this biscapular abduction or humeral flexion, so coming forward. So it's pulling on the strap in the back, and then the cable is causing the elbow to flex. And then he can lock and unlock the elbow, which is what he's demonstrating now. Which is kind of a diagonal towards the floor behind you and pushing down through your shoulder. So that white strap in the middle is what's locking and unlocking, helping keep that in line to help unlock and unlock it along with this other strap. So he also has his terminal device that he'll show here in a moment, that how he operates it, but really the same motion that's controlling the elbow is also going to control the terminal device. So he has to lock the elbow in place somewhere before he can start to operate his terminal device. So that's what he's doing now. And then you can also see here shortly that he has got a wrist rotation piece. So he'll be able to supinate his hook and then relax it back to kind of a neutral position. All right, so I will move forward from there. This is a really cool video that I want to show, another controls training. We talked about wanting to make sure that someone is maybe learns one side of their prosthesis first and then maybe the other side. And in this situation, this person is shoulder dysartic on one side, or very short shoulder, and then above elbow. And so he's got to really think about what it takes to control his right side versus his left side, because it's two different control schemes. So you can see his therapist over here on his right hand side, or on the left side of your screen. She's telling him, okay, do this activity, and then he has to do it. So wrist pronate down, extend your elbow, and flex your left elbow, flex your right elbow. So much mental concentration to be able to do something like this, especially with a terminal device, a wrist, an elbow, and possibly a shoulder joint. And 4 different muscles controlling many different things. All right, so I'm gonna pause again here and see if there's any other questions or things that people want to chat about before we move on to ADLs.
I just wanted to say it was nice to see Chris putting together that portable dressing tree. Sorry.
Yes, he enjoyed doing that. Okay, well, so we'll move on to activities of daily living. So I'm just showing you some examples of adaptations people have come up with, or adaptive equipment, and then just the kind of natural progression of, we've gone from toileting, bathing as kind of like immediate needs to now, okay, well, I'd really also like to be able to prepare a meal by myself. I'd also like to be able to brush my teeth. I'd also like to be able to dress myself, or go to the grocery store. So do leisure activities. And so with bathing, there's so many cool different things and adaptations that are out there. So this leads me to adaptive equipment that's been out there for eons, and maybe Patterson Medical or Salmons Preston or whatever it's called these days, and different medical device catalogs that have all these amazing pieces of equipment. Everyone uses different things that make them independent, and so what works for one may not work for other. But I have seen a lot of people using these types of devices that dispense shampoo, conditioner, and soap in their showers, just because it makes life easier. Or even one of those large shampoo conditioner dispensers that have the push top. But these devices, there's so many pieces of equipment out there for all of the different categories, and you can find pieces of equipment out there that might be great for someone that has had a stroke or a brain injury or an amputation. And so the nonprofit that I mentioned at the beginning is working with the students, the occupational therapy doctoral students at Texas Women's University here in Houston, to put together an adaptive equipment publication. And so we're going to have everything in one place that would be beneficial for people that are missing both arms or all 4 limbs. And we're going through with our Enhancing Skills for Life community within our support groups and our closed groups, suggestions that people have put in there in the past. And it's kind of crowdsourcing information, over the past 12 years or so, and trying to put everything together in one spot. So be on the lookout for that sometime, who knows, but hopefully by at least 2022. But I'll go through some of these pieces of equipment that are helpful for some of these various activities. So a large shower stall is helpful. A non-slip floor would be helpful. A bath bench might be helpful. And levers instead of knobs, the wall-mounted soap dispenser, and any kind of pumps, like I mentioned earlier. So if you've seen surgeons when they're scrubbing in for their surgeries, they might use these really cool foot pumps. And so this is some of these dispensers that someone has modified and put in their shower. So they can press down at the bottom of the shower with their foot, and then that dispenses the liquid. So obviously that person would need to have prosthetic shower legs or feet to operate this. You can take different little scrub brushes and put them around your shower wall. Suction cup scrub brushes. I love those feet mats that have suction cups on the bottom of them. Whether it's like, you could even take like a front door mat and adhere suction cups to it and put it on your shower wall. But there's some really cool options out there now that basically they're just kind of silicone rubbery, and you can put them on your shower, and then that way you can scrub your wash your hair or rub your back and put them at different strategic locations throughout your shower to make you independent with bathing. Again, levers. And really cool solution here, being able to turn the water on and off, and then control hot and cold with their feet. So, and this kind of that pump dispenser that I mentioned, that surgical dispenser up here at the top, and then some more of the wall mounted dispensers, but they're hooked up to these cool little elaborate tubing system. And then that tubing will run into that car wash sponge. And so that, again, just different placements, and that can help reach, shoulders or legs or bottom. And then they've even got a tornado body dryer inside their shower, so they can dry off after they finish showering without having to use a towel. I love this picture, shower arms. So basically just some plastic with some other things that are water, not water resistant, but able to take water. And then some of those little poof sponges affixed on the end of it. And then they are able to reach their back, and then they can flex. Let's see, they can flex their, it's not going. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Some reason my PowerPoint is not advancing anymore.
We do have one question.
Yeah.
Who's in the question area from Beth. It says, I'm curious as to how folks might have devices that cleanse on the toilet. I use what I call barbecue tongs. Are there other devices? I have palms, no fingers or thumbs, and can do pronation and supination.
Yes, there are. For whoever that is, look up something called Bottom Buddy on Amazon. And that is several people that I've worked with swear by this device. It works wonderful. And so if anyone needs to contact me after the presentation, I can send out links for some of these things. But yes, the tongs are great, but there are a few other inventions that have come out in the past couple of years that are probably slightly better.
And you said Bottom Buddy? I'll put it in the.
Yeah, Bottom Buddy.
Sean, can I do a screen share real quick?
Of course, because my PowerPoint froze. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the Bottom Buddy, let's see, where am I? Here.
I'm going to go to stop share.
Sean, I think you got it. Okay. So here we go. Let me do it again. And let me do this. And let me click that. And so is that picture big enough, or you want me to make it bigger?
Yeah, great.
So these are some of the things that you're talking about, the Bottom Buddy, the tongs. There's also the Freedom Wand, which is similar. You could use that either for your bottom or for bathing. The Long Reach Comfort Wipe, things like that. So there are devices out there that are available. For myself, this is what I found works, being able to use a prosthesis to reach around behind my back. And I am not, excuse me, I'm not on the toilet while wiping. So whether I'm wearing legs or not, doesn't matter. I'm off the toilet, And then with the body powered, I can reach behind my back. And then again, because it is body powered, 45 degrees on either side of my body, I can open and close the hook. So I can wipe and then bring the hook in front of me and discard the dirty paper. But the bottom buddy would be the upper left picture in this instance. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, well, my PowerPoint came back, so I'm going to try to get back there, but I'm going to really fly through a lot of this stuff and then get to everybody else on the panel. So let's see, I'm going to start here. So the grooming, what I would recommend is any kind of suction cups or gooseneck clamps. Gooseneck clamps could hold a razor, it could hold deodorant, it could hold a toothbrush. Suction cups, similar. Just lots of cool adaptations and ways to have something be stable, and then you use body English or your body movement around it. So brushing and making sure that the female considerations are addressed. If it's females tend to be more flexible than males when they're older. Do they want to be able to do their hair, put on makeup, be able to don and doff bras, do other grooming like shaving, and then being able to deal with the monthly cycle, and whether that's something that's managed medically or with special underwear. So just making sure that stuff gets addressed. Tweezing. Ponytails, I will skip this video, but it's a really cool video of a device called One Up Ponytail that allows Mandy to be able to put her hair up in a ponytail. Dressing trees we talked about. And when it comes to dressing, just making sure that individuals make sure that if they like tight jeans and they want to still wear tight jeans, then figure out a way to help them put on tight jeans. But maybe you talk to them about elastic and sweatpants and slip on and off shoes. But it's all about preferences and how much time and effort they want to put into the dressing process, and if they have help and what they want to do. So just a really cool other techniques of tools and adaptations that people have used to be able to put on socks, magnets and retrofit zippers into a boot to help them up in the Great White North be able to put on boots and have them stay on, but using a zipper and a magnet in this way. When it comes to feeding and meal prep, whether it's an electric, like one-touch can opener, a jar opener that's awesome, Dyson that'll help hold things still, adapted knives and cutting boards, scoop dishes, working in the kitchen. I think this video is impressive just because it shows someone that is able to do some independent feeding because they've got the right componentry and they make sure that they have an electric wrist rotator. But utensils can be adapted so many different ways. And so whether it's a swivel, a right hand, or it's a built up grip, so many ways to help someone be able to be independent with feeding. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with Texas assistive devices, or even quick disconnect wrists. You can take your prosthetic hook out and then put in a fork or a spoon instead of. So instead of using your prosthetic hook to take a regular fork and feed yourself, you can put in one of these cool devices instead. But like I said, some people want to make sure that they can do everything just with their prosthetic devices instead of having to use all this adaptive equipment. Okay, largemouth containers. I'm going to kind of fly through some of these adaptations, but just making sure everything's easy access so that there's not a lot of trouble when they're reaching underneath cabinets or into closets or pantries. Swinging doors, or if they're knobs, turning into levers, light switches so that they're a little bit easier to operate if it's not a smart home. So after you've kind of addressed all of these things as an occupational therapist with their activities of daily living, what kind of hobbies are they wanting to get back to doing? What things kind of give them joy outside of their home work life? So is it fishing? And are there cool adaptations that you can put into the end of a prosthesis? And is it gardening? Look at this cool thing that this guy made for his feet. This gentleman was born without his arms and is able to garden. He just adapted like something around his boot with a shovel. So he's able to like lock it in place and then dig out some dirt and be able to drive a tractor with his feet. And do we want to return to working out? And if so, what are we going to need to be fit prosthetic wise to be able to grab onto a weight bar or a machine or on pulleys? We're also going to address community reintegration. So are we going to the gas station and need to be able to pump gas and insert a credit card into that stupid slot and pull it back out in time? Going to the grocery store, being able to order food at a restaurant and maybe take a tray back to your table or go through a drive-through. So pictures of a few of those items. So this one makes me laugh because it's just, your hand might get stuck on a grocery cart and you have to figure out a way to get loose because it won't come off. So here's a really cool tip with a credit card. You take one of those little miniature work clamps or even a clothespin and take it onto the end of the credit card, and that gives you some length so you can slide it into the credit card slot. Oh. And then some driving, but I really want to go to this last video here. Let's see, I'll show this part. So this gentleman he was showing the gardening and driving the John Deere tractor, and he was sitting on the ball earlier. This is really cool. He's got in his headrest in his car, he's got the ability to depress buttons inside the headrest. That if he leans to the left, it might do his windshield wipers or turn his left blinker. And if he leans to the right, it might do other options within the car. And then he's able to steer and operate gas and brakes with his feet. And then this video of Anna Calvo, I'm not sure if any of you guys know her, but this video is pretty cool of her vehicle setup and how she's able to drive independently. So a little bit higher tech than the gentleman that had the headrest. Okay, so basically just to summarize with some of this stuff, what we've learned is that those individuals that are missing both arms or all four limbs, everyone's very inventive. Everyone is very motivated for the most part. And if they're motivated to smoke a cigarette, they are going to figure out a way to light that cigarette. They've got a very strong support system. There is a need for multiple prosthetic devices, and there's a need for attendant care, and money and good insurance obviously helps a lot. We also know that peer mentoring is crucial. So whether it's a local meetup or it's an online support group or it's Facebook, it's and Zooms, in this COVID world, extremely helpful. So, in this particular situation, gentleman traveled in from out of state to do his prosthetic care and rehab, and he was able to meet with another individual, and we're able to go out to dinner, and basically just by going to dinner, learned 20 things to be more independent when eating a meal. Even let him drive his truck because he hadn't driven since his accident. So peer mentoring and face-to-face interaction is crucial. So I mentioned that early onset or versus adult onset, congenital versus later in life acquiring of loss. When this happens at a younger age, most often foot skills are going to be used. You're, maybe way more flexible if this is acquired at a younger age. You're definitely going to be using all of your body parts, mouth, shoulders, knees, teeth, but there could be long-term consequences from that. So it's important to stay tuned to your body and its needs to make sure you're being careful. And then might you be wearing prosthetic devices at some point, or are you just more comfortable without prosthetic devices? And so in this particular picture, you can see someone lighting a match with their toes, which is quite impressive. So in this woman, Barbie, if maybe, I don't know if she's ever been involved in Camp No Limits before, but there's a video out there of her putting milk in the refrigerator, driving and going through a drive-through, changing a diaper, doing the laundry, doing the books from her computer business. Anyway, and I believe now she's a professional bodybuilder and competes in competitions. But I do want to make sure to mention a few of these resources that there is a group out there called Our Ability. So this gentleman, John Robinson, he helps connect individuals with disabilities to jobs and education. Make sure you look into your state vocational rehab councils when it comes to returning to work or school. And then make sure to let you guys know that Enhancing Skills for Life has a website, has YouTube channels, has a Facebook page. We have on our YouTube channel, we make sure to link to people like Jessica Cox and Tish and Anya and Amy and Mike. But the ones that I've kind of put stars next to are those that I know of that have put out channels and helpful information that were congenital or lost in an early age. And so here are those links. And they each, besides their YouTube channels, they each have their own social media platforms and extremely willing to help others. And we also have monthly webinars that we do to help bring people together that are missing both arms. And we have different topics each month. Some are for limb loss individuals only, and some are open to the public. And then our Skills for Life workshop, we have a virtual event coming up October 15th through the 16th and an in-person event in 2022. So I'm going to put my contact information here on the slide. And then I'm going to just leave that up there for a second. But I would love for Mike and anyone else on the panel to just chime in and make sure that whatever I might have missed or went too fast with, that it now gets covered.
Questions? That's my thing. Questions, if you got one. So really great presentation, Sean. Thank you. Definitely a lot of information there, useful information as well. And I think for newer people, it's what you don't know, and then there's fear of that unknown, fear of, can I do this? Can I do that? And my position is just try, because that's how I tackled a lot of the things that happened to me. And one of the things that I felt a little different about was the word failure. And for me, it was kind of a almost made up word, because if I didn't try, then I failed. And if I stopped trying, then I failed. While those two things might be polar opposites, the one thing they have in common, it was my choice. I chose not to try, or I choose to stop trying. So if it's a choice, then it's not a failure. So it's a choice. Being a quad, I chose to get rid of the right prosthesis because it was a little bit more awkward. And at the time, my daughter was only 6 months old, and I was in a power wheelchair and fiberglass on top of a power controller for the wheelchair, slamming into walls, door frames, stuff like that. Got rid of it. So everything is a choice, and I think that was definitely brought out with Sean's presentation, that so many different people chose so many different ways to tackle the same task. So there is no such thing for me as failure. It's just I choose. I choose to do a thing or I choose not to do a thing. So
And I would love, Bella, if you're still around, to hear kind of your experience over the past several years, and then what's going on with you and with nursing school and how that's going.
Hi. Okay, so I think that with like some of these adaptive tools, you kind of honestly just kind of figure it out, and it's never, I'm trying to figure out the right way to explain this. Like, what I started with isn't necessarily what I have now. Like, over time, you kind of figure out what you like, what you don't like. You get new ideas, like from these calls and other amputees. And I do, at first, I really didn't want prosthetics. And so I got a lot of other adaptive tools. I have some right here. Like, this one's for writing, and it's not like the whole elbow, wrist, all of that. It's very basic. I have one like this for eating. I have this one too. This one has like a magnet, so you can take on and off different ends. So that way you don't need like a million of these, which is really cool. But for nursing, I decided to get a prosthetic. So I have just like your regular hook prosthetic, and that one I've gotten to do a lot of different procedures with that I'm like working through right now with school. It's definitely like there's a lot of challenges and a lot of different things involved, but yeah, that was when I kind of resorted to just a regular prosthetic. So yeah, I mean, I guess I use a lot of many other things too, like in the shower, I have the pumps, which I love. And yeah, I guess that's kind of it.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just thought it would be helpful to hear from your experience, since a young age, and then, now what you're kind of going through with school. So thank you.
Thanks.
And Sarah Cronin, what about?
I think one good question would be, from all the panelists is, what did you find to be the most important thing, like that you really wanted to be able to figure out on your own, like first and foremost, if you had to pick one thing? Like, what was the most important to learn?
Sarah, you gonna jump in?
Sure. I was waiting for someone else. For me, dressing and bathing to my independence. I think I was very lucky. I happened to go to a school where it was strictly for physical disability. So the school had physical therapists and occupational therapists. So I was able to get those services and really got the care of what I needed. So my occupational therapists are still my favorite people in the whole world, because they just took it upon themselves to say, you're not giving up, because there's so many times that I said, well, I can't do that. And the biggest lesson was they just left me by myself in the bathroom and said, we'll see you in a half an hour. I said, who's working here, me or you? And they, sure enough, they came back in a half an hour, and a lot of times I still needed help. And then eventually it just clicked. And that in itself is, it's more important than me teaching and driving. For me not to have my independence, I just know I needed that more than anything else. So.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm like really a guy kind of guy. I was like, I just want to put food in my face. I'm hungry all the time. My stomach is broken. It's like I'm always hungry, and I just want to be able to feed myself. And my wife, Christine, God bless her, she got tired of me eating popcorn out of her hand like a horse, where I'm just mouthing the lips. She's like, no, 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 no. We got to figure this out, you know? So all of the ADLs, but feeding was up there. Toileting was probably my second biggest thing. And then dressing was like, okay, I get dressed, you know? And again, it's the personal perspective, you know, the sexuality, male versus female, what's important, what's not important. But I definitely agree, Sarah, with the leaving you alone and letting you figure it out, because what works for me might not work for you, but what works for you is what you're going to do. And Bella, you're absolutely right. Like, I've changed what I do and how I do it multiple times over the decades, because it's like, oh, I can do it this way, but is there another way? Because what if I'm not wearing a right prosthesis? What if I'm not wearing a left prosthesis? What if I'm, you know, without it? What if I'm on the floor? What if I'm in a wheelchair? So figuring out multiple different ways to complete the same task is vital.
We do have one question for Bella. For how did you acquire the different tools that you showed? Did you get that through the prosthetist, or how did you get those?
Well, I would say like the beginning stages was all like more OT things, like OT tools. I mean, we made like a little cloth sleeve that like would little things you could pull in and out of it. And then because I didn't want prosthetic, right? So, but then I went through the prosthetist to get like these actual molds of my limbs. So yeah, I guess in the beginning it was more of like a DIY thing that you kind of just figure out. And then later on, when I kind of switched over, was when we went through the prosthetist and such.
Thank you.
I just wanted to jump in just as a parent of a child. Here's the child. She's so excited. I could just camera. So just to encourage OTs and parents, just to let your child struggle. It's hard to watch them cry and want to just sit there and help them, but you can't do that. Like, you just gotta like not hands off. And I have sent her back to her room on more than one occasion and been like, you're getting dressed, or I'm calling Miss Sarah, because Sarah Cronin and I we're best friends. So I just text Sarah and I'm like, I know that Sarah's going to tell you the same thing that mommy's telling you, is that I'm not going to get you dressed this morning. You're going to do it. So it's really hard as a parent to watch your child cry. And I know that she's cried in front of OT before, and it's hard for the OT to sit there and just let her do it and let her figure it out. But to do that, and I really just want to encourage you all just to do that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sarah, because it's never what you're missing. It's what do you have left, and how can you best utilize that to accomplish the task. It's not, there's not any one device out there that's the magical sliced bread thing that's going to work for everybody. So, you know, I mean, between myself, Bella, and Sarah, it's what works for us. What are we comfortable with? What are we used to using? What's in our environment? What do we know? There's a lot of, especially bilateral, you know, shoulder dysartics or congenitals. They'll use hooks and dressing trees and suction cups. And, you know, there are common things between all of us in the sense of that we utilize different parts of our body. Our mouth is a hand, shoulders, knees, whatever is left. And we're going to make that help us do the thing we're trying to do. You know, one of the first things, going back to the food guy, was my wife had gone shopping and left the groceries on the counter, the dry groceries, and took off again for, I forgot what it was, but there was a bag of Doritos, and I really wanted in that bag of Doritos, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. I couldn't do it prosthetically. So I grabbed a steak knife and cut the bag open, and voila, Doritos. So it's figure it out. And it occurred to me the other day that, especially if you're an acquired amputee, you're kind of like a toddler all over again. And sometimes you just need to cry it out to figure it out, because once you're done and once you're left alone, that's when the rubber meets the road. And that's when you got to step up, and that's when you really got to figure it out. There's been multiple times in my life where I've tried to do something and gotten so frustrated, so upset, cried, sometimes took a nap, woke up, and then go right back at it. But getting over that emotional aspect of the frustration and allowing myself the mental headspace to not be successful the first time, but keep coming back at it. That's the key.
One thing I wanted to mention along those lines is one of my observations, and this is just an observation, is the gentlemen in our Skills for Life community that seem to want to be more independent and want to accomplish self-care tasks and not be so dependent on a loved one or a caregiver or a spouse. The younger the female, the more independent they might be. But I've definitely noticed the females in our community tend to, if they're married, tend to be very dependent on their spouse or family to do certain basic, and I mean like bathing or dressing. And so it's interesting to me. I think the younger that you are, and again, if you have to be independent, I think you will be, and you'll teach yourself how to be. But if you're able to rely on someone else and aren't forced into that situation currently, it may end up biting them later in life. But it's just interesting to me to see. Just now something clicked in my head what you said, that it just made me think about different individuals that we come across in our Skills for Life workshops, the difference between levels of independence.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's for me, the way that I approached this was, I needed the help in the beginning, but then I needed the swift kick in my backside to kind of make me want to reach that level of independence. I toileting specifically. So it was a calendar year that I did not wipe my backside. My daughter was 6 months old when I got sick, not quite a year old when I got out of the hospitals. And so from January 2000 to January 2001, I didn't wipe my backside. And my wife finally said, no, you're going to do this because I'm tired of, feeding 3 mouths and wiping 3 backsides. So you need to step it up. And I'm like, So fear, I was scared. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what to do, and then all of the struggling and the frustration and not being successful and having that mental energy and that exhaustion of trying and trying and trying and trying and trying. And, finally it was like, oh, okay, if I do it just this way, then it's helpful. If I do it just this way, plus this, it's even better, and one of the hardest things, I mean, toileting was tough, but shaving my face was like, which I didn't shave today, I didn't shave. So, but shaving, I'm not kidding you, I would cry, take a nap, and then go back and do the other side of my face. So it would take me over an hour to shave my face. And then after, a couple of weeks, it was better. After a month, it was better. After 3 months, I'm walking around, drinking coffee, shaving my face, watching the news. So persistence, stubbornness. That's a dual-edged sword, because the things that make me independent can also make me resistive to the assistance that I do need. So, recognizing that asking for help is not a weakness, it's realizing how far I can take myself before I do need that help. I want to try first. Let me try. Give me 3 chances, and then if I'm still unsuccessful, okay, I'll let you in. So, but definitely being left alone. I like it. That's a good strategy. That's a really good strategy, because that's when you really, really figure it out.
And I just think there are some days this still doesn't click. Some days it takes me a little bit longer to get dressed. And I'm saying, still, I'm 39 years old, still gonna take me this long. But you just surrender and say, practice makes it all work, and it's gonna be okay. But there are days that I'm saying, no way, there's no possible way it's taking me this long.
Yeah, and there really is a difference between giving in and giving up. I gave in to the situation of limb loss, but I didn't give up on my wanting to be independent, my wanting to be successful, my wanting to be here. And again, it goes back to choice. Every day that I wake up, I choose to be here. I choose to be in a happy state. I'm not always successful, and I'm not always, earlier I was saying I was all tweaked out and pissed off because this web camera that I bought, the $20 web camera, I ended up throwing it out like an hour before this thing started because it wasn't working, and I just got tired of fussing with it. So you know what? You upset me, you gotta go. Bye-bye. And here I am on my daughter's laptop. So, and with a really, really bad COVID hair. Just, I'll take care of it this month.
And I don't mean to put Bella on the spot, but I know I've had discussions with Dad and other people, but just like as growing up, I know sometimes I think that might be a good point to point out too, is kind of like picking your battles. Like if there's a time when it's just, you're like, we got to figure this out. Like sometimes maybe it's not that important right now, and come back to, work on something right now that is working, and then kind of come back. So I don't know if you want to speak to that a little, Bella, or Sarah even, because I know you guys were both young.
Do you want to go first, Sarah?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, I'm unmuted. You can go first. For sure, picking battles. I would say that it was just time, and certain throughout my life, certain things mattered more than other things. Getting dressed sometimes were more important than toileting, or it took me a while for me to figure out how to wash my hair. As embarrassing as that was, my mom was washing my hair for a very long time, and she, I think, forgot me one time, and I said I could wash my own hair, and I just did it with my feet. So but looking back, I could have been doing that since I was a baby, probably. But it wasn't so important because I lived with my mom, and she would just readily do it for me. But now, no way, nobody's washing my hair. I'm washing my own hair. So and what else? And driving, when I was a kid, I didn't even think about I didn't know I really could drive, and becoming a teenager and then going to college saying, oh, I'm driving for sure. That became more important. And that too, I have a V grip on the wheel, and I don't have a wheel it's a normal wheel, so there's the same amount of resistance. So that took a while for my arm to get used to turning the wheel. And within practice and time, I was strong enough, and my arm doesn't bother me when I'm turning the wheel. But I think as life changes, your needs change in terms of what's more important for you. Go, Bella girl.
Yeah, I honestly agree with all of that. Like at certain times in my life, there was something that was really important, and then I would kind of put off the other stuff until a later time. And you might even get comfortable like with your parents always brushing your hair every morning, and then you don't even think, oh, well, how would I do this myself? Until you're in a situation like you're you're alone, you're separated from people, and you like just have to figure it out. And I feel like, yeah, I've done that a lot where I prioritize certain things, kind of put off the other ones. Yeah.
Again, coming at it from a parent perspective. So we brought Min home when she was 2. And she wasn't walking yet, but she was still doing a lot of things already independently. Her nannies in Vietnam were excellent with encouraging her little independent soul. And so we talked, with our OT therapists and stuff, and we have family who have children with limb loss. And then we quickly got integrated into the Camp No Limits family. And so I talked to a lot of people, and they were like, just treat her like you would any other child. So if it's naturally time for her to start learning how to get dressed by herself, just do that. If it's naturally time for her to start brushing her teeth, just do that. And so, again, working with her OT that we've had since the day we brought her home. So Miss Susan and I, we've kind of come up with a plan. And I'm like, okay, what are other kids her age supposed to be doing at this point? And that's just how we prioritize for her at this age as the parent making the decision for her. And she very much voices her own opinion and thoughts and how we're going to do things. And we, for the most part, let her, have her way with how she wants to do things. Because again, she's going to be the one who's most comfortable. But now that she's just started school this year, so I'm going to be curious to see as she gets further into school, all her little independence, like how she's going to start prioritizing things by herself. And I'm going to have to step back from that role. Okay, she's eating.
Min, what time is it for you? Is it past your bedtime?
It is. Daddy actually went out with his parents, and I was like, I can't go. I've got this thing that we're doing, and Min was staying here because she was painting, and so I was like, just bring us back something. Well, I guess the restaurant took Indiana, of course. So it's bedtime here in Kentucky, but that's okay. We're just gonna eat our pasta and be just fine.
So cute.
So, she's sassy. I'm so sorry. I can probably turn because I'm sure people are very curious. Sit down and show people what you do. So she, I'll just FYI, I'll just take over. I'm sorry if it's okay.
No, please.
She does not use prosthetics. She uses her
me.
thing. So, and then the other thing, and I don't know, Sarah, maybe you can attest to this at all. So everybody that I've talked to who's got upper limb difference congenital, they always have a lower limb something going on too. I don't know what it is. So she's also missing both of her fibulas, and her tibia is like curved, like an elongated C. And so it actually allows her to turn her feet in a little bit more than other people would. So she's able to do everything with her feet. And so if you get to see that more in action, if you get on Facebook and you look up Meeting Min, that's MINH, I don't think I typed in the chat, then you can see all sorts of things that she does by herself with her feet. So that way too, for people who are OT, PT, that kind of thing, you get some ideas, because it's a little bit of a unicorn, because we love unicorns, don't we? It's always fun though. We're getting ready to have to go back to Shriners again, because she does not have her fibulas. Her fibulas are curved. Her feet cave in a lot, and actually she walks on her toes on her right foot, which is causing her to be like her hip. And so again, thank you, Camp No Limits. It's going to be referenced a whole lot. We were told at the beginning, like, if to that parent, it is not balanced, if they're not even, if they're not doing things evenly on both sides of their body, pay attention to that, or they're going to have major earlier rather than later. So we are going back to trainer here in the next month to get her fitted for night braces. We can't wear them during the day, can we? That's okay. That's fine. So.
Yeah, and I think, Sarah, that's a really great point, because you're basically describing aging with limb loss, and body symmetry and balance and all that stuff was fundamentally something I definitely learned from Camp No Limits. Even though I'm a quad, I only wear the left prosthesis, so I try to do a lot of bimanual tasks with both residuals, so that you don't get an overuse syndrome that you can hear about, especially with unilateral amputees, where their sound side is now, they got carpal tunnel issues or they got other issues. The foot skills, I know that Jessica Cox and the other girl, they talk about problems with the hips later on in life because they are such adaptive foot users. Aging with limb loss is something that we got to be cognizant of and pay attention to. And the core tenets of any therapy program, range of motion, core, you know, all of that is very, very pertinent and fundamental to aging well.
Yeah, I'm just very thankful that we were told about it as soon as we went to camp, first camp when she was 3. So I was like, oh, that's good to know at this stage in the ball game. And then I said, like, before we were in the process of adopting again, and we're not sure what that child's going to look like yet. We don't have a face and a name, but I'm like, dude, like, I'm ready for it at this point. Bring it, whatever it is. So, and I mean, we've told the adoption agency, I said, we'll take them, whether they're missing one pinky toe or all 4 limbs, like, we can handle it at this point. We know we can, so.
I'm doing.
Is there any questions on the chat board that I'm not aware of?
No, I think you guys have done an amazing job answering questions and sharing your perspectives.
I just saw a message from Beth. She says, I'm 56 and as a quad, I do CrossFit to keep me strong to age gracefully. You go, Beth.
'56. That sounds like you're a 64 baby. I'm a 64 baby. CrossFit for me is drinking different beers. Okay. Sorry.
Well, I don't know, Mary, how much longer do you want us to?
I think we're good unless we have some more questions and I think you reminded everyone about your, about Skills for Life and the virtual events and everything. So I definitely would recommend it. I think I've been to all of them except for the last one, just because Benny was little.
Yeah.
So I think I actually attended all of them besides that one.
Yes, you have.
So very, very helpful information. Great as a therapist. Great. You know, I'm hoping that Bella and Sarah will come with me next to the live event is my plan.
Yay.
So I think it's a great way to connect for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And great for therapists just because you learn so much just from everyone, obviously.
And Bella, I would love for you to meet Dawn and Karen in person.
Yes, I've actually emailed them and called them a bit. So
Yay.
it's so great to learn about, you know, just the way they do things and everything. But yeah, it would be so great to be able to go experience that and meet them.
Yeah. Good.
So as long as we don't have any other questions, but thank you, Sean, so much, and all the panelists for joining us. And hopefully maybe we can do another one at some point. Some other, you know, some other specialty information or things that people want to learn. We would love it.
Yes. Thank you, Min and Sarah. And thank you, Sarah and Bella. Mike, of course. And thanks, Kelsey and Sarah and Mary for putting it on. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night.
God bless.